Hi everybody, I'm Ryan. Today we're going to look at the new set, Phyrexia All Will Be One, which is coming out in just a few weeks, and the mechanics within that set. Now some of these mechanics are old, but some are brand new, and I'm very excited to share them with you. Let's do it. The first mechanic is Toxic. Now Toxic is this new take on Infect, where I really think Wizards is trying to get around the pump up a 1/1 Infector and win the game. Now, if a creature has Toxic, they have Toxic a certain number. Toxic 1, Toxic 2, Toxic 3, etc. Creatures with Toxic, when they deal combat damage to their opponent, in addition to normal damage, they also give that number of poison counters to their opponent. And for those new school players that don't know what poison counters are, if your opponent has 10 poison counters, they lose the game. So for example, if a 5/5 creature with Toxic 2 deals combat damage to the opponent gets 2 poison counters. The coolest part about this new set is that Toxic stacks. If a creature already with Toxic 1 gets Toxic 2 from something else, it now has an instance of Toxic 1 and an instance of Toxic 2, so it'll give 3 poison counters to the opponent when it deals combat damage. Now that's exciting. The next mechanic in Phyrexia All Will Be One is Corrupted. Corrupted is this really interesting mechanic where your cards get better when your opponent has 3 or more poison counters. For example, the land The Seed Core has tap to add a colorless mana, or tap to add 1 mana of any color to cast a Phyrexian creature spell, or have tap to target 1/1 creature gets +2/+1 until end of turn, but you can only use that ability if your opponent has 3 or more poison counters. Now, this will likely just be used in these Toxic decks, but I think there's a world where you kind of attack your opponent on multiple axes, where there are certain corrupted cards that are so good that you really, really want to play them and turn them on. And so even though dealing poison counters to your opponent isn't the primary job of your deck, you might have things in your deck that give poison counters so you can turn on your corrupted cards, even though you're attacking from a separate angle. I think that'll be a really cool deck building decision, especially if you want to play these corrupted cards anyway. The new mechanic for Mirrodin is basically the new Living Weapon. Now, Living Weapon, when an equipment enters the battlefield, it creates a 0/0 germ, and that equipment is automatically attached to that 0/0 germ. For Mirrodin is exactly the same, except it creates a 2/2 Rebel, which is cool. Equipment is now also creatures. This is something we've seen before, but still something very cool. It also means we're able to have equipment that doesn't pump things up, but have essentially Living Weapon. You know, have equipment that just does stuff, but it still creates a creature and having a 2/2. Oil counters are the next new mechanic. The interesting thing about oil counters is they don't specifically do anything, but in having a new counter, there's going to be certain permanents that both give oil counters 2 permanents, and then certain permanents that have, if this has a certain amount of oil counters on it, it can do an extra ability or things like that. It's just something to be aware of. We don't really have anything else to talk about with that. But going off of oil counters and really poison counters as well, one of the most exciting returning mechanics in Phyrexia All Will Be One is Proliferate. Proliferate is an ability that sometimes is on spells, like instances and sorceries, sometimes it's on creatures when they do things. Proliferate says you can add a counter to any number of permanents that already have a counter on them. For example, if there's a creature with a +1/+1 counter and you cast a spell that proliferates, you can give it another +1/+1 counter. If you also have a planeswalker that has counters on it, add another loyalty counter to the planeswalker. If you have a permanent with an oil counter on it, you can also add another oil counter to that permanent. And maybe the most exciting thing, if you have an opponent with a poison counter on them, or multiple poison counters on them, you can add another poison counter to your opponent. There's so many things you can do with Proliferate and add so much play to the game that it's very, very exciting. But those are the new mechanics in Phyrexia All Will Be One. I hope you're as excited as me. We have the return of poison counters, which is cool. Like playing Magic on multiple axes is really, really fun. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.